Have you ever sat through a stewardship campaign? Maybe, yes. Maybe one or two. Maybe 30 or 40. Maybe you've sat through a stewardship campaign here at Spirit of Peace or elsewhere and thought, wow, this seems so strange. Why on earth are they doing it this way? Or maybe you've sat there and thought, wow, this is an incredibly well-run stewardship season. Your response probably has something to do with whether you and the people on the stewardship committee who have designed the experience share a similar theology of giving. A similar or a different theology of giving. Theology meaning God talk, how we talk about God, what we believe about God. But it's not just for the spiritual stuff. It is deeply connected to how we think and feel and what we do with our money. Our theology of giving shapes so much, but is often unconscious or unspoken. So this question came up as the stewardship committee was forming this year. We started talking about some new ideas and why it had been done differently in past years. And I pointed out that each of these decisions that the stewardship committee was making reveals a piece of our theology of giving. And they said, that's really interesting. Would you preach on that? And I said, sure. So here we are. So the theology of giving shapes things like, do we share a goal amount that we need to raise up front? Do we create the budget first or after the pledges have all come in? How long do we want people to sit with that pledge card and think about what they're going to give? How much information do people need? What voices and messages do people need to hear before they decide what they're going to give? All of these things are logistical questions, but they also point to what we believe it means when we give to Spirit of Peace. So I'm going to offer you a little snapshot of some of the ways, some of the different theologies of giving that I have seen. This is by no means a comprehensive list. I look forward to hearing what you add. You are likely, if you're like me, not holding one theology of giving, but two or three or a combination of multiple. There isn't a right or a wrong way, right? There is no right answer here, but it is important for us to continue to deepen our self-understanding and to be able to share that with one another as a faith community. So your handout has, and if you're online, the link has some touch points of what I'm going to be talking about. So if you want to look as we go through, that's what that is. Or you can just experience it and look at the handout later. Does anyone not have a handout who wants a handout? Okay, great. From Mark chapter 12, Jesus sat watching how much people put into the treasury. Many rich people came and put in large sums, but when a poor widow came in and put 2 copper coins, Jesus called his disciples and said, "Truly I tell you," which is when we know Jesus is serious about something, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of those who are contributing to the treasury." This scripture passage points towards a theology of giving that focuses on giving as a spiritual practice. A practice in trust, a practice of remaining grounded in God's abundance rather than the scarcity that this world tries to feed us. It isn't about how much you give, therefore, but instead about giving an amount that stretches, that challenges, that transforms the giver. This theology of giving would say it doesn't make any sense to start with a goal dollar amount. But instead, we each need to engage in a careful, often longer, process of spiritual discernment, and whatever we are able to bring forward together will be enough for what God is calling us to do. Giving as a spiritual practice. A different approach, or maybe a combination approach, might be the collective ownership model. And I made all of these up, so maybe you all will come up with better names. This is not drawing from any academic source here. This was often one of the theologies that Paul used, he used a lot, including guilt, which I'm not even including here because it shouldn't be included. But this is one of the theologies that Paul used as he wrote to the early church in Corinth. He would talk about the people he was sending to visit and how this took resources of money and time and hospitality. Today, that might sound like, hey, Spirit of Peace provides each of us here activities and networks of support and pastoral care and music that inspires and opportunities to do good. And all of these things cost X amount of money. What will you contribute to make this possible? In this collective ownership model, it makes a lot of sense to start with a dollar amount and then ask everyone, what can you contribute to this whole? So are we starting to see what I'm meaning by theologies of giving? I'm going to go through the rest a little quicker, but we can see perhaps how this impacts how we engage in stewardship season and how it impacts our faith, what we believe it means to give our money. So again, no right or wrong, but as we say here at Spirit of Peace, we endeavor to journey together and ask questions that change us. So here are some other theologies of giving. Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. This scripture, along with many others, has been twisted to create the incredibly damaging prosperity gospel. This is the idea that the more you give to church, the more you will be financially blessed. And it has been used to coerce poor people into giving more than they can afford. However, there is truth in this scripture that the more deeply we are invested in a particular community, in our faith, the more deeply we may open ourselves up to the transformative work of God. So you might call this giving as investment, but I'm not talking about money, because it's rare that the more you give to the church, the more you will financially receive. But there is a return on investment that goes well beyond anything that money can buy. Another duo of options. Are you a first fruits giver or a corner of the field giver? This came up in our sermon talk back with Reverend Phil Hodson. Our new favorite collective book of the Bible, Leviticus, chapter 23, has scriptural foundation for both theologies of giving in the same chapter. Verse 9 and 10 invites the Israelites to bring forward their first fruits of the harvest to the priests as an offering. Fast forward, verse 22 invites them to leave a corner of their field unharvested so that the poor among them may have enough to eat. Today, that might look like starting your budget by first giving away the amount that you feel called to give and figuring out the rest of what you need. Or it could look like figuring out what you need to live and then giving what is left over. First fruits, corner of the field, maybe some of both. But then why are some people field owners and some people field gleaners? Leave something to question. Maybe you believe in giving as justice model. In Acts, we hear that the early church endeavored to share all things in common so that everyone would have enough and so that no one would have too much. I see some cheers in the back for giving as justice model. This model invites us to look at the systems that distribute and divest wealth from certain communities over others and endeavor to heal historical wrongs. Or you can look at all the scripture passages that say it's hard to enter the kingdom of heaven if you're wealthy and think that giving away some more of it will clear out more space, clear out more barriers between you and God. Giving as justice. Maybe you believe in tithing model. I know we could keep going on, but there's two left in what I'm doing here. Maybe you believe in a tithing model, also from Leviticus and carried through scripture. Tithe means tenth. We hear a tenth of the land's produce, whether in grain from the ground or fruits from the tree, is God's. It is holy to God. So for some, the exact percentage isn't as important as having a set percentage that allows giving to increase and decrease depending on the week, month, year, or season of life. Maybe you believe, last and final, though not in real life, but in this sermon, you believe in giving as a stewardship model. So in Genesis, we hear that God gave humans a unique responsibility to steward all of creation, too often understood as dominion over, but better understood in the context of God's love and care and protection and nurture, giving as stewardship. So I'm sure that there are more theologies of giving out there. Maybe you heard some and you were like, yes, that's it. And you heard others and you said, ew, why? And that's oftentimes when we have something deeply rooted, a deeply held belief, we'll experience this gut instinct of yes and absolutely not. And that's one of the joys that we get to explore that in community. Here, why is my yuck someone else's yum, and vice versa? So we have a couple discussion questions, and then I'm going to explain how we're going to break out into groups. So our discussion questions will be up on the screen for us. You'll have about 20 minutes in groups of 3-ish, 2 or 3-ish. So question number 1 will be sharing about one person in your life whose theology of giving shaped your own. Oftentimes, these are things that we learn consciously or unconsciously at a young age and carry through our lives. So what did that person teach you about giving and God, and how did they teach you? Because sometimes it's a sit down, let me share a lesson with you. More often, it's a watching what other people do around you. So that's question 1, share about a person who's impacted your theology of giving. And question number 2, share a little bit about your current theology of giving and a bit about how it has changed or not changed in recent years. So you might use some of the language on the handout, or you might have a different phrase, a different theology of giving that connects to you. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to give instructions for breaking out still, but are there any questions about our questions or what you're about to do? Okay. If you have the type of ears that can be in a room with other people having small group conversations and you can hear another 1 to 2 people, I'll ask you to stay in here and break out into groups of 2 or 3, because this room will get loud. So if your ears can do loud commotion, this is your space. If you would really like to be outside, I know it's a little chilly, but it's also gorgeous. So if you would like to be outside and have these conversations, head outside and break out into groups of 2 or 3, depending on how many folks are outside, if anyone decides to go outside. If that does not describe, neither of those things describe you, we're going to spread out. So my office is one option. We may use the storage room if we need to, but we're going to see. The nursery is the 3rd door down, and then the youth room is all the way down. So I'm going to kind of wait and see how many people are here, and then I'll help distribute folks into the other rooms. The questions are at the bottom of the handout that I gave you as well. Does anyone want a handout who did not already receive a handout? Great. There should be many extras. Excellent. And folks online, we were going to wait and see, but I think one Zoom room, huh? How many folks are? 3. Oh, great. I love that. You're on it. Okay, great. So we are going to come back at 10:20. So you have 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how long it takes to get into groups. All right. Go and converse. All right, about 4 minutes left. 4 minutes left, folks. So if you have something else you definitely want to say it now. 4 minutes. 4 minutes left. 4 minutes. 4 minutes left. All righty, folks. We're coming on back. Final thoughts. Welcome back, everybody. What's that? I love it. I would expect nothing less. Welcome back to our online folks, and welcome back as we're re-congregating here in person. We're not going to spend